David van Wyk is associated with the Benchmark Foundation, who just recently, just before the Marikana moment, produced the report on platinum mining in South Africa. He's also been in exile in Zimbabwe between 1983 and 1992. He was also a part of the Northwest Provincial government between 1994 and 2003, a member of the South African Communist Party in the Northwest Province, and now is an independent researcher working on the Policy Gap series reports in mining in Southern Africa.
Right. I'm an independent researcher, but most of the work that I've done since 2005 has been for the Benchmarks Foundation. The Benchmarks Foundation is an organization that's associated with the South African Council of Churches, and it was an organization that was created immediately after the end of apartheid to take over where the Sullivan Code left off, and to ensure that investment in South Africa, but also South African investment in the rest of Africa, is done in an ethical and responsible manner. It doesn't mean that we support the notion of corporate social responsibility. It means that we critique the concept and that we critique the corporations and so on for their lack of responsibility very often. And we take a very pro-poor stance. And the organization has created also a Center for Corporate Social Responsibility, which trains doctoral and master students, as well as offering a wide range of courses also for NGOs, trade unions, community-based organizations, and so on. Other aspects of the organization will become clear as I proceed with the presentation. I'm not only going to talk about platinum and coal. In fact, I'm not going to talk much about coal at all. I'm going to talk more about platinum, but I'm also going to talk about the fact that we do work in the whole of SADC, in all SADC countries, and we work there consistently. Okay, so we spent lots of time in Zambia, we spent lots of time in the DRC, we spent lots of time in Mozambique, Namibia, Botswana, and so on. And we work very closely with communities affected and impacted on by the extractive industries. And some of our work has also included training of SADC journalists and so on how to report on the issues of extractive industries and so on. I used to be very active in the Communist Party in the Northwest Province. I've lapsed my membership in the last 5 or so years because I frankly think that Jesus will come before the Communist Party does, and I'm more closely associated with the South African Council of Churches, even though I'm not a Christian, I'm an atheist. Okay? Okay, this is Leonardo da Vinci speaking about extractive industries many centuries ago, saying, "That shall be brought forth from the dark and obscure caves, which will put the whole human race in great anxiety, peril, and death. To many that seek them, after many sorrows they will give delight, and to those who are not in their company, death with want and misfortune. This will lead to the commission of endless crimes. This will persuade bad men to assassinations, robberies, and enslavement. And by reason of it, each will be suspicious of his partner. This will deprive cities of their happy condition. This will take away the lives of many. This will make men torment one another. For this, the vast forests will be devastated of their trees. For this, endless animals will lose their lives." Leonardo da Vinci, a long, long time ago. Very, very prophetic. My intent is to show that capitalist mining pollutes the human body, it pollutes the air, it pollutes the water, it pollutes the politics of SADC countries, it destroys communities, and it destroys workers. This is at the Dag Hammarskjöld Foundation site in Zambia. And this is a plaque that I thought is very good. Goodness is something so simple. Always to live for others, never to seek one's own advantage. And I think this is a very good credo to guide us in this discussion also. Which part of the world is the richest in mineral resources? And I'm sure the answer is obvious. It's Africa. Right? On paper, South Africa is the richest country in the world. Where are the worst inequalities of the world? We heard this yesterday. In Southern Africa, where you have the most minerals. Which part of the world has the worst pandemics? The same area which is also the richest in mining. This red area over here. HIV, AIDS, silicosis, TB, you name it, we've got it. Platinosis. Is there a correlation between mining and HIV, AIDS? This is Botswana. The worst affected areas where you've got 40% and more seropositive is on the eastern parts of Botswana, where you've got the trade routes and the mines. Okay? Close correlation between trade routes because they supply the mines, and the mines themselves because of the migrant labor system that the mines, the cheap labor system that the mines employ. This is by district in Botswana. District prevalence and operational prevalence for the mines. We see that the district prevalence is always higher than the operational prevalence. And the reason for that is that these mining companies have got very good HIV/AIDS programs. And so the mine worker gets his ARVs and everything else, his treatment, and he thinks he's healed when his red blood count improves, his red blood cell, what do you call it, improves, count improves. And you have a situation where he then goes back into the community and has casual sex again within the community. And because there's high levels of unemployment in the community, one of the only ways that women can make money in those communities is through transactional sex. And that is why you get that difference every time. The Benchmarks also has another very interesting program that I'm involved in throughout Southern Africa, and that is that we've got a monitoring school where we train representatives of community organizations to monitor the impact of the extractive industries on the communities. And we have them in South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Tanzania. If you go on the internet, look for Marange News. It's a direct outflow of that, the diamond sector in Zimbabwe. We bring monitors from other countries to South Africa. We take South African monitors to other countries. At the moment, the Rustenburg monitor is training communities in Tanzania. We train them in understanding impact. We train them in basic research. We train them in mapping and photography. We leave them with cameras. We train them on how to use the internet. And if you go to the internet, you will find the Rustenburg monitors have a blog site. They're also on Facebook. You will find that the Welkom monitors have a blog site. They're also on Facebook. You will find that the Klerksdorp monitors are on Facebook. They also have a blog site. And we get them to begin to communicate with communities in South America, in Asia, in the Pacific, and in other African countries, so that they can share experiences of struggle, and so that they can coordinate their struggles, and so that they can also have a sense of global solidarity between them. We train them in Paulo Freire methods to write and to do their own reports, and we also train them how to network, and we have the community exchanges, as I've said. This is in Solwezi in Zambia, where monitors are busy mapping the problems in their communities as a result of mining and talking to each other about what strategies they can employ to begin to deal with the problems that they are encountering. This is Mosele, the 100,000 square kilometers that First Quantum Minerals wants to alienate from a population of 38,000 people. It's only going to offer about 3,000 jobs. After that, I don't know what the other people in that community has to do. What they will just become unemployed and sex workers and so on. And also the problem is that yes, these people do need access to hospitals, they do need access to schools and so on, but you can do that without first quantum minerals. And this is other parts of Zambia where mining already occurs, and you can see the level of pollution in the water, the green stones and so on, high levels of cobalt. The town of Kitwe, about 5 years ago, was considered by Time magazine to be the most polluted town on the planet. These are dumps, mine waste dumps from mines in Kitwe. And we can see that ordinary people who are unemployed become hunter-gatherers on these dumps. They begin to hunt and gather the rubbish that the mining companies throw away in order to survive, regardless of the fact that they're toxic. Okay, this is more water pollution, and you can see from the color of this water that the iron content of the water is very high, and therefore the acid content of the water is very high. Very common in Zambia, very common destruction. This is the price of development. This is Mopani Mine, Glencore, Swiss company based in Zug, the tax evasion capital of the world, listed on the stock exchange last year. Glencore is in the process of buying out Xstrata. Xstrata is in the process of buying out Lonmin. And the sulfur dioxide levels here are incredible. There's not a zinc roof or a piece of metal there that's not rusted beyond repair. And of course the people's lungs and so on. You get out of your vehicle in this community and your eyes start burning and your nose starts running immediately and your throat starts getting very raspy. Across the border from Musele and Solwezi is Kolwezi. Kolwezi is where the uranium came from for the first atom bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the DRC. And if you go to Katanga province in the DRC, you don't find any trees higher than my shoulder. That is because when mining was run as a state mining corporation in the Congo, the towns in the Congo were very well managed. Kolwezi was well managed, Lekasi was well managed, Lubumbashi was well managed. And if you go to those towns, you can see the evidence of well-managed towns in the now ruined sports facilities, the now ruined cultural facilities, the now ruined shopping areas, the now ruined roads. The other thing is that you've got cities the size of Pretoria, Lubumbashi, where if you open your tap, there's no water in it. And you switch on your light, there's no electricity. And the consequence of that is that people are cutting down the forest to turn them into charcoal to sell to the people in the cities where there's no more power. Okay? So wherever you go in Katanga, the forests, these used to be close to rainforests, the trees are this high. And you don't see any animals and you don't see any birds. Nothing. You hardly see insects. Let's get to platinum now. How important is platinum to the world? It's that important. It is so important that in June 2012, the American Resources Policy Network put out a report on critical minerals and metals, and the Senate also had committees on it. Right, and we saw this map in the previous presentation also, noting that platinum 77% comes from here, and more than 80% of the resource is to be found here, the reserves in the resource. This graph shows the strategic importance to the United States, also to the European Union. European Union did a similar report. And if you look at the top right-hand corner, that is where the really, really important minerals are to be found. And that is palladium, platinum, and rhodium, all up here. And they're all platinum group metals that are found mainly in South Africa and in Zimbabwe. And the Americans are very concerned, and the Europeans are very concerned that there's a near monopoly in terms of the production of platinum, Amplats, Impala Platinum and Lonmin produce together between 77 and 80% of the world's platinum. And if anything goes wrong on any of these mines, the platinum supply to the planet is affected. Now, what is happening globally on a corporate level is that Glencore is busy buying out Xstrata, and Xstrata is busy buying out Lonmin, which will make Glencore the biggest buyer and producer of platinum. It's already the biggest buyer of cobalt and copper, so it can hold the Zambian government to ransom. It can hold the South African government to ransom. It can hold South American governments to ransom, and it can in fact effect regime change. And regime change and mining corporations go a long way back. Cecil Rhodes used regime change against the Boer Republic of the Transvaal because he wanted to get control of gold for Britain. Okay? So these monopolies are very, very serious for us and our future and our politics, because our system can very easily be subverted or overthrown by it. And then we want to ask ourselves, how is it that our politics have become so polluted by mining companies? That our comrades who used to be trade unionists are now taken in as the black face of the corporation, and when there's problems, who gets pushed forward? Cyril Ramaphosa. We don't see Ian Farmer. We don't see the white faces behind Ramaphosa. We see the black face. When I go to meetings with mining corporations and we sit and the social responsibility people are there and the personnel division people are there, they're usually black and female. Right? Because when there is a problem at Marikana, who did they send forward? A blackface to talk to the workers. Right? And I have many, many friends who were comrades of mine in the Communist Party, who were comrades of mine in NUM and so on, who are now working for mining corporations, and they are offered fairly good packages to be personnel division people, environmental people, and so on. But when the stones get thrown, you don't find the white bosses anywhere. You find what Kobushiani, I think, was the guy who was put forward by Lonmin. Who was the chap who was on TV constantly? I forget, but he was, the face that they put forward, and they told him to give these harsh messages. You must go back to work on Monday. We can't negotiate with you, etc., etc. Let us look at Bojanala district, where we do a lot of our work around platinum. We don't just work in Marikana. We've been working since 2005 in Marikana, in Ikemeleng, where Kroondal mine is. We've been working in Chaneng. We've been working in Tlabani. We've been working in Ikemeleng, and we've been working in Luka, all the way from the southeast to the northwest in communities. We've got 27 organized communities as the Benchmarks Foundation. They don't belong to Benchmarks, they've got their own structures. We just help them to be able to begin to express themselves, to begin to negotiate, to begin to engage with the government and with mining corporations. And we really would like for us to be able to cooperate with the trade union movement as well, so that we can get workers and communities to begin to speak with the same voice on these particular issues, because it affects both workers and communities, and it often affects the worker in the community as well, because many of these workers live in the community. And we will see that later. Right, this is Marikana. Unfortunate. Last week, Thursday, these crosses were put up to commemorate the people who unfortunately died there, unnecessarily died there. Now, what gave rise to that 34 people who died? This is unemployment in the Bojanala district. Number of employed people, number of unemployed people. And you can see the blue bar exceeds. And this is where the most intensive mining takes place, here and here and these areas here. Okay? there's much more unemployment than employment in the Rustenburg area. Mines always come to your community and they say, give us your land. We'll give you jobs. We'll give you hospitals. We'll give you schools. We'll give you roads. We'll give you development. They never tell you about the negative things that they bring. They don't talk about the pandemics. They don't talk about the unemployment. They don't talk about the sex work. They don't talk about the destruction of your community. They don't talk about the destruction of your culture. Those things they don't talk about. They also don't talk about the externalization of costs that's associated with mining. And we will talk about those externalization of costs as we proceed with the presentation. Right, if we look at the unemployment figures here, the age group 20 to 29 years old, unemployed 43.8%. Other not currently working, 33.8%. Add 33 to 43. And you get more than 70%, more than 75%. Unemployment in a very volatile group. People ascribe the uprising in Egypt, people ascribe the uprisings in the Arab Spring to youth unemployment. And by the way, few people know this, but in Marikana, you had strikes in May 2011. The NUM and AMCU guys will tell us about those. But you also had community uprisings, which very few people know about, where the community stopped the mine from operating and said, you will first come and meet with us and listen to our concerns before you can continue with your operations. And that spread to Ikemeleng squatter camp, and that spread to Chaneng village. In Chaneng village, the community stopped the mine from operating for a whole week. And the provincial government, the Premier's office, and the mine now sits with the community on a monthly basis to talk to them. But the new uprisings are coming in January and February because the mines know how to befuddle people in meetings. They send different people to every meeting. They don't keep agendas, they don't keep action lists, they don't keep minutes, and so on. And they think that communities are stupid. Okay? Just like they think mine workers are stupid. And they still call mine workers boy. And sometimes the black managers who come in as BEE partners and so on very often fall into the culture of calling the mine workers boy also. Meaning that the man never becomes an adult. Our boys, my boys. Okay? Right, this is Marikana. This is Marikana School. This is Lonmin's advertising board. They built a couple of classrooms. There's everything wrong with this picture. There's everything wrong with this picture. Right? This picture is completely alienating of the local community, regardless of the fact that the classroom was built. Because no local people were used in the building of those classrooms. You can look at those contractors, they're all coming from outside. Right? There's huge unemployment in Marikana. There's many guys who are bricklayers and builders who can build. There are many plumbers. There are many electricians who are unemployed there. Right? But they will bring people from outside to come and do these jobs. Okay? These jobs could have been done by people in Marikana, and these people could have been getting an income, they could have been developing their capacity, their skill, and also their own self-view as human beings. Because it is terrible to be given things by a big corporation, rather than doing things for yourself. Right, we've discussed this particular slide, let's proceed. Education. And the statistics I use here is from the South African Treasury. Okay? They're not just some thumbsucks or whatever. Only 20.1% of their adult population has completed their high school education. And only 5.5% has obtained some form of tertiary education. Now, if we go back to the previous slide, which I inadvertently skipped, we also see that the education status of people older than 20 years indicates that the Bojanala district labour market is characterized by low skill levels. as much as 15.1% of the population older than 20 years have not received any form of schooling, and a further 19.7% only some primary education. These figures imply that nearly 35% of the total adult population can be regarded as functionally illiterate. Now, my father became a mining engineer with Standard 8. That is Form 5 or 6 or 7. 8. Okay? Now, the reason why he could do so was because under apartheid, mining companies had technical colleges in places like Welkom and Klerksdorp and Orkney and so on, where you could train while you are an apprentice to become an engineer. Right? They closed all of those down come 1994. Right? Mining corporations under colonial law, the British colonial law in Zambia, in Zimbabwe, and South Africa were required by law to build towns where there were no towns where resources were found. Klerksdorp, Orkney, Welkom, Kitwe, Kabwe, Ndola, they were all built by mining companies. Right? Post-colonial mining companies stopped that. They say, no, we focus on our core business, which is mining. We're not responsible. And in the Congo and in Zambia and in Zimbabwe, all those mining towns are falling apart because there's not even a revenue stream from the local mine to those towns anymore. But you can see that it was Anglo who built those towns because they used the same architecture as Welkom. They used in Ndola, in Kitwe, and Kabwe, and so on. You can see Anglo's buildings wherever you travel. Okay? For some reason, we allow the mining companies now no longer to have that responsibility. And the mining companies are only too happy, and I suspect that there's a subtext of racism that operates. It's a black government. We're not going to do this anymore. We will now do our core business. Right? And the roads and the infrastructure and the towns are literally collapsing. In the Congo, you will see the future of South Africa if you travel with me. If we don't begin to hold these corporations accountable. Under colonialism, those towns were built for white workers. For some reason, we cannot build towns for black people who are in power. We've stopped that. We've changed the mining laws. We are also at fault as a government because that particular clause that was common to the Zambian mining law, it was common to the Zimbabwean mining law, it was common to the South African mining law, we should have retained it. Anglo-American in its reports in the 1960s speaks about running a mini welfare state in South Africa. Right? It no longer does that. Right, this is Lonmin's CSR projects. This is a hydroponic agriculture project that they built. They built this project specifically to get a new order license. The moment they got their license, they allowed the project to collapse. Okay? About 100 million down the drain. About 120 community members lost their jobs as a result of the company allowing the project to collapse. In the Rustenburg area, it used to be a major food producing area in South Africa. You also have collapsing agriculture. The agriculture is collapsing because of the impact of mining on the area, the impact on water, the impact on air, as well as the impact of large numbers of unemployed people having to live in very, very appalling conditions, in very close proximity to mines, and then you start having a situation where people start looking for food on the farms themselves. And so you find dozens and dozens of abandoned farms. People blame Mugabe for taking white farms. The mines in South Africa are destroying commercial agriculture much faster than what Mugabe ever can. Right, this is a bit on housing in Marikana. And racism, again. These are the hostels. The comrades from Loom would be able to tell me. Between 60 and 80 workers, 5 toilets, 6 showers. They don't build doors on the showers. They don't build doors on the toilets. That's too much of an expense. It will increase the cost of production. Okay? Completely dehumanizing. I asked the workers, when last did Lonmin paint this place? They said, we can't remember, or more than 20 years ago. This is an advert in an Australian magazine about housing in Australia for mine workers. House perfect for incoming mine workers. The house consists of 2 apartments, upstairs and downstairs. Upstairs is 3 bedrooms, one bath. Downstairs 2 bed, 1 bath. Both are fully equipped right down to the sheets. 2 kitchens, a comfortable casual environment, close to the beach. Perfect for groups of workers or 2 couples. My father was a mining engineer. He worked all over Southern Africa. We followed him. In many places, they paid for our curtains, for our teaspoons, for our teacups. Right? And this is what they do in Australia. In Australia, the average wage of a mine worker per annum is 9 to 10 times higher than the average wage of a South African mine worker. And the mining companies will tell you, oh, the mining conditions are different. We are doing open cast mines in Australia. And open cast mines need machine operators and they are capital intensive. And therefore they require higher skills. Well, I've got news. Most of the mines in platinum are open cast mines. There are some shaft mines, but about half of them are open cast mines. Most of our coal mines are open cast mines. Yet, we don't get the same wages as Australians, but we operate the same machines. And it's the same mining companies, BHP, Billiton, Xstrata, Anglo, and so on. The reason? Racism. Simple. This is typical Australian housing for mine workers. And now compare it to this. There's even a bird making a nest in that collapsing ceiling there. This is with the Farnham Commission. This is Farnham and his crowd over here. Nobody was looking up at the ceilings and so on. And that's a typical South African mine hostel. And if you take it back and you compare it, and I've done this comparison in Policy Gap 1, I took pictures of concentration camps in Nazi Germany and compared them to the layout of mine hostels in South Africa. They compare very well. Right. Siphumelele mine of Anglo Platinum, also Marikana. I spoke to a rock drill operator in Marikana. He'd been living in a shack for more than 18 years. Right, what causes people to live in shacks? Well, simple. The mining charter says that we must do away with hostels, we must turn them into family accommodation. I've got no problem with that. Although I'd rather prefer that the mining company builds houses for workers. Right? So, it gives workers a living out allowance, between 800 and 1,800 rands a month. The nearest formal housing is in townships in Rustenburg, far away. So if you go on the waiting list for RDP housing, you're going to wait an awful long time. Because there are other people who are locals who are on that list already. Right? The second thing is you're going to spend a lot of your money on transport to and from the mine. The third thing is you work shifts. You have to do that transport at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not safe. So what happens when people take the living out allowance? I can take you to Google Earth on any mine. You can name me any mine in South Africa. I will show you the squatter camp of that mine. This side, the squatter camp. That side, the golf course. That's the class division. That's the division of inequality in our country. Golf course and squatter camp. The difference between hostels and squatter camps is this. In Marikana, in Wonderkop squatter camp, you get water once a day at 12 o'clock at night. So you have to stay awake with a bucket and wait for the water to go on, because the water pressure is not enough to feed the mine and the squatter camp. So it only goes on once a day and you must run for your water. This is an externalized cost, because housing should be a cost of mining that they should take. But they are putting this cost on society. We must now house their workers, which they should be housing themselves, seeing that they are bringing workers from far away to come and stay there. right? And then what happens is that the local community gets to a situation where they start putting up shacks that they rent out to mine workers. And so you get to a situation where you have 15, 20 people squashed into an RDP yard, into zinc shacks and so on, and they pay rent to the house owner. But the toilets and infrastructure is designed for a single family in a very small house. Most white people, that house is their lounge, or their lounge might even be bigger. And the infrastructure collapses. The drainage system collapses. The electricity supply system collapses. And this is again from Treasury. Large housing backlog in Rustenburg, right? 101,000 units. A modest total of only 22,000 houses were completed between 2000 and 2005. Large and growing informal settlements, squatter camps. Illegal occupation of land and unlawful evictions in rural areas. Unavailability of bulk infrastructure to support housing development in rapidly growing areas. The population are all flocking to Rustenburg because they think they're going to get jobs there. And then they end up in squatter camps. And there is no accommodation. And so the system breaks down, and the sewage system breaks down, and the sewage system spills into the local rivers. Now in Marikana, in the same river, the Elands River that feeds the Buffelspoort Dam, the Buffelspoort Dam has amongst the cleanest water in the country. Downstream past the mines, that river now has bilharzia. Bilharzia is not a common disease to the Rustenburg area or to the Highveld. It's a common disease to Central Africa. Where does it come from? It comes from the urine that is spilling through the sewage into the river system, because malaria is a snail that resides in your bladder. Suddenly we've got malaria in Rustenburg because the bulk sewage system is not coping with the situation of the increased population and so on. And this woman here, this is one of our monitors in the Marikana area, and she is showing him the medical reports of her daughter who is chronically suffering from stomach problems as a result of the fact that all around the house bulk sewage points are broken down, and in some of these houses you have to jump over pieces of rock to get to the door. They have reported the problem to the local government and to the mining company for a period of 5 years. Nothing was done. Nothing was done. Maybe after the massacre now something will be done. Okay? Let's discuss the issue of women. Samantha started hinting at it. Right, we interview one woman. She's been interviewed 5 times for a job at Lonmin. 5 times. Who interviewed her? The local councillor. Why didn't she get the job? Because the councillor asked for sex. 5 times. Right? The mines also use the chiefs to recruit labor. Now the mining companies use migrant labor for their men, but it's very difficult to get women to become migrant workers, so they employ local women to make up the Charter's 10% requirement of women in mining. The Charter is wrong. You cannot limit the number of women in the mine to 10% because then you reduce women to a minority in the demographics. So every time the skip goes down, the shaft, there are 100 men in that skip, 1 woman. And the women all say the men start groping them when they are packed together like that. Right? When there are exercises of first aid exercises, accident prevention, disaster management exercises, where someone has to pretend to be injured, the men all say, woman, you lie down, you are injured. Why? Because they want to grope her. Okay? In some of the mines, when they have their medicals every year, the doctors expect the woman to stand in the same room, naked as men, to be tested. In some mines, there are no facilities. The women have to stand outside the change room and wait for the men to finish before they can get into the change room. And in Anglo Platinum's mine, that nice fancy mine I showed you just now, a woman was murdered in January this year. She was murdered in a sexual transaction that probably went wrong. The guy had his sex and then refused to pay. She then probably said, I'm going to charge you with rape, and he then bashed her head in with a rock. No one is saying women should not be involved in mining. They should be involved in mining. But the people who own the mines, the corporations, need to work out how to deploy women in the mine in a manner that will not lead to their sexual exploitation. Apart from that, when you get to the rock-faced teams like the rock drill operators and so on, women are excluded, so they cannot make the bonuses that you get, the productivity bonuses in the mine. So how do they get a bit of that bonus? They get a bit of that bonus by having transactional sex. Because the basic wage of that woman would be 4,500 rands, and the only way that she could increase that is by having that transactional sex. And NUM guys in Rustenburg, UMCO guys in Rustenburg have told me that you can see condoms on the conveyor belt that brings the rock up in the morning, right? A manager, personnel manager at Anglo Platinum said to me, at month end, before payday, the Friday before they pay, you have to walk carefully underground so that you don't step on condoms. Okay? So the situation underground is hell for women at the moment, because the South African mining companies are chasing a target in the mining charter and not thinking about how do you actually employ women in a meaningful way and in a non-demeaning way in the mining sector. Percent of deaths among males and over 63% among females, according to the Medical Research Council figures. Okay, and then of course you have issues like HIV, TB, and so on as well. And TB program is a silent accident happening on South African mines daily. Professor Gavin Churchard makes the point that we in South Africa are dealing with a highly mobile population in the era of HIV and AIDS, because miners have regular interaction with wider communities in which they live. And this is why we can't control HIV and AIDS, let's be frank. And in Rustenburg, the provincial premier went there last year, the unions were present in the meeting, the local government was present, everyone was there, and everyone threw up their hands in the sky and said, what can we do about this disease? We can change the labor relations on the mines if we want to deal with this disease. And this is the spilling points there in Rustenburg I told you about, Marikana, the sewage spills into the river. And then there are huge challenges with regards to water. We spoke about that a little bit. Water sanitation, schools, clinics, the whole toot. I won't go too much into that so that we don't waste too much time. The other thing is this. This is Marikana, the railway crossing in Marikana. You can see the lady is dodging to see if she can get past before the train. Okay? Now, I don't know, are there comrades from Rustenburg? I see there's one UMCO comrade, but he's not really from Rustenburg. Are there other comrades from Rustenburg? NUM comrades? None. These mines have been in Rustenburg since 1930. They cannot put bridges or crossings on their railway lines. The Thursday after the massacre in Marikana, a taxi got hit at one of these crossings. And there are hundreds of them in Rustenburg. Unguarded crossings. It's too expensive to put a boom for the world's most wealthiest mining companies. The wealthiest mining companies on the planet. They cannot afford to put a boom. And if you think that I am joking about the crossings and so on, here are some articles from local newspapers and so on about taxi accident a week after Marikana. At Benchmarks, we don't think that it's a conflict between workers that led to this massacre. We lay the blame squarely at Lonmin's fault, at Dawn. We say Lonmin is responsible for what happened at Marikana. Not UMCO, not NUM, not COSATU, not workers, the bosses. Okay? I think it was because of the appalling conditions under which mine workers have to live. Let's think about mine safety. You're living in a squatter camp. You don't have electricity. You don't have clean water. You burn coal to keep warm in winter. In summer, you cook in that little oven of a zinc shack. You don't rest because and you don't eat properly because there's no meal provided for you, you go to the cheese and nyama, they are very good, but if you've got money, right? Also, you go to the shebeen for entertainment and you drink too much. After the entertainment, you pick up one of the women at the shebeen and you don't sleep. You come to work the next day in a very dangerous job. Shaft mining, 1,000 meters down, in very confined conditions. And you're not paying attention to your safety. And this is why mine accidents happen in South Africa. You house workers poorly. You put workers in appalling conditions, living conditions. And then you don't know why mine safety is a problem. There are 2 mines in Zimbabwe, and the media quoted me on this after my presentation to Parliament. They said, I said mining in Zimbabwe is better than South Africa. I didn't say all mining. I said mining at Ngezi mine and mining at Mimosa mine is better. And the reason for that is, in those mines, the mining company builds houses. When Zimbabwe had an economic crisis, it even bought the groceries of the workers. It pays the school fees of all the workers in those mines. And they have safety standards similar to first world mining operations and so on. Then of course there's the issue of subcontracting and labor broking, big problem, because it degrades labor, it cheapens labor. And there was a spectacular failure also of local government. Mos Parkway, who was a NUMSA member, became a councillor. Mos Parkway took a file this thick, talking about Mayor Wolmerans's corruption in the Rustenburg Council, Tulutuli House. A week later, Mos Parkway was shot dead in his driveway. Right? Now, Wolmerans was found guilty of killing him, Wolmerans and his driver, the mayor of the town. But no one has said what happened to that file. That file should be submitted to the Farland Commission. Because there we will see the causes of the massacre. The corruption and the pollution of the local government by the mining companies. Right, the massacre was not an event, it was a process. It happened over many years, and it came to a head in August 2012. And Marikana could have happened anywhere in South Africa where there's mining. It could have happened in Klerksdorp, it could have happened in Chaneng, it could have happened in Mpumalanga, it could have happened anywhere, okay? Because of this cheap labor economy that we are sitting with. And because of the fact that mine bosses don't respect people. Let's proceed, I'll go through all of these. I won't spend much time, this is just to confirm. This is a graph which Amplats produced on the 23rd of July, 1 month before the massacre. In this graph we can see these are the NUM members. Yeah, those are NUM members. These are unorganized workers. They don't belong to any unions. These are the workers that before the massacre, AMCU recruited. So I don't see a conflict between NUM and AMCU. Right? I don't see a conflict between NUM and AMCU. I see AMCU organizing amongst unorganized workers. Right, this is a life of mine, and comrades from COSATU and everyone, please take note. When a mine starts, the unit costs of the mine are very high, but the costs stabilize. Although they tell us all the time, mining costs are too high, mining costs. This is Lonmin's graph to shareholders, right? The cost stabilizes over the life of mine. Then it increases when the mine closes. And what happens when mines close in South Africa? The mining company runs away. There are 6,000 abandoned mines in South Africa, 600 in Johannesburg alone. And a mine after closing is much more expensive to maintain than a mine during operations because of the impact of the mine. And the mine's impact can last for up to 150 years. Or what do the companies do, the big companies? The law now says that you've got to rehabilitate your mine when you close it. The big companies, just before the mineral reserve runs out, just before the mine becomes unprofitable, they sell the mine. They sell it to some small company, usually a BEE company, Zuma, Mandela. I'm not denigrating those people, but the use of false geological reports is common in South African mining. It has been common since the time of Cecil Rhodes. Cecil Rhodes launched the British South Africa Company with false reports to the London Stock Exchange so that he could occupy Zimbabwe. Okay? Now, I just want to warn you, there's Roland. This is where the massacre took place. Roland is about to go down. Okay? There's K3 and 1IB and 4IB. They're all on the way down. All these shafts are going to close, not because of the strike, not because of labor costs, not because of trade unions, but because the reserve is running out. We spoke about that earlier, natural resources running out. Now, when the reserve is running out, you are going to have a problem there in those communities, because what are you going to say to those communities? You've been there for more than 100 years. There's been no development in those communities. Right? And you're going to run away and you're going to leave them with the costs of that mine. And I can take you on a toxic tour of Johannesburg and show you the abandoned mines and the consequences of those mines, if you wish. All these mines here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shafts of Lonmin are going to close down in the next 5 years. Same with Impala. Have they discussed this with COSATU? Have they discussed this with NUM? Are they telling this to the media? No. They're keeping silent. They will blame you for the closure of those mines. They will say, it's because of you that we're closing the mines. You see, you're a bunch of troublemakers. Too much class struggle, Patrick. Eh? But there are new mines coming up here. But they will not be in the same area. Okay? They will shift into different areas. Right? MPRA requires that mine make provision for closure by setting aside funds. We find that the funds are insufficient. The funds don't take consideration of inflation. I told you about the abandoned mines and the big mining companies selling the mines just before they run out. This is the Department of Minerals and Energy. These are closed mines in Johannesburg. This kid walks to school every day, and these are shafts that are up to 1,000 meters deep, and we regularly find kids falling into these shafts and dying because it's unprotected. Right? Let me shock you some more. Go to Reiger Park. Go to the nearest flats to the tailings dam. I took an American journalist there. Within 5 minutes, we found 5 children with birth deformities associated with uranium poisoning. Okay? This child is now dead. When she was alive, she could not close her eyes because she didn't have eyelids. Her head was too big. Her arms and her legs were deformed. She lived until she was 3 years old. I know of kids in Reiger Park who are now 21 years old, who have been a vegetable for 21 years. We asked the one mother, don't you think this is terrible? She said, no. At least the police won't come at night and say that my 21-year-old son raped a woman. Because he's a vegetable, he's lying behind the couch. Okay, it's a high crime area, it's a high drug area, Reiger Park, because of the high levels of unemployment. Okay, and these are CEO incomes in South Africa for mining companies. Right? These people are making serious money. They are making serious money. According to one report, 3 of the Lonmin guys, their income together could have paid the income of more than 6,000 workers. Okay? Nationalize the mines, socialize them. That's it. Thank you very much.